The money story and the mind piece is so important is because we're often chasing a new strategy. Like I'm sure you have people come on the show that are like telling you how to be better with expanding your land business, right? But the thing is that the strategy, the sales, the messaging, the technique, we're like, oh, we need more shiny object syndrome. No amount of strategy is ever going to override the story that you have around money. So what happens is you're self-sabotaging and you're blocking it often without even knowing it because you haven't spent time to discover what your story is.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the LandFans Show. I'm Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Danielle McKinley. Danielle McKinley is an intuitive money coach who helps ambitious entrepreneurs master their money to unlock freedom. After scaling a bootstrapped SaaS company to a nine-figure exit, Danielle now blends strategy with intuition to simplify the complex, rewrite money stories, and create systems that allow entrepreneurs to build wealth without burnout. Known for her magnetic energy and real talk approach, she teaches audiences how to align their money, mindset, and mission so they can scale their businesses and actually enjoy the life they're building. Danielle, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
Oh, what a nice welcome. I am awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I am just over the moon to have you on the show. We got a chance to visit and meet just a couple of weeks ago, and I was blown away by that conversation. And I'm so excited to have you on the show. So, for those who may not know exactly who you are or what you do, can you tell us a little bit about your backstory? Like, can you share a journey about how your career started as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I didn't know I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I thought I wanted to be a dance teacher. So I grew
Ooh.
up dancing, and I mean, it was 5 days a week at the studio, nonstop. Thank you, mom, for paying all those bills. And I always, there were signs, right? So there were signs that I wanted, that I was interested in money. And hindsight's always 2020. Like I used to count coins. We had those big 5 gallon jugs, like just full of coins, and I would count them like once a month. And I played business a lot. So my grandfather owned a life insurance agency, and I loved going over to their house and hanging out with his desk. And I would ask my friends, like, let's play office. And we would have clipboards and pens. And I didn't know, like, I didn't have words for it though, that that's what I wanted to do. And I also have always been a challenger. So I've been somebody that's like, well, why are we doing it that way? Just because it's always been done that way, like, what if there's another way? And so those are all indications, right, of an entrepreneur. But I didn't know it at the time. It wasn't until I was in college and I was going to school for business administration, and I'm sitting in a business class, and my professor is talking about business. And I'm like, I raise my hand and I go, have you ever owned a business? And he said, no. And I said, I made a decision like in that moment, I dropped out of college. And I said, well, why would I learn how to build a business from someone who's never done that? I'm going to go get real world experience. And if that doesn't work, I can always come back to school. And so that's how it started. And I've been an entrepreneur since I was 22.
Wow, I love that. I love that so much. So many things that I immediately resonate through that, all through the dance teacher stuff, the art stuff. It just lights me up so much. I love it. Now, tell us, how did you come into this SaaS company? Because a nine-figure exit, I mean, it's one thing to hear it and you're like, oh wow, nine figures. But when you really sit down and think about it, I mean, that is huge. So how did that come to be?
So I didn't do it alone. It takes a village, right? So it is definitely not something that you conquer on your own. And that was a really interesting process. I've always been an intuitive, but I haven't always been aware of it, right? I've used it as a guiding compass. And basically, I was in the industry of credit card processing. And my boss became my business partner. So we were working with a group called LVI Global. They do continuing education for cosmetic dentists. And we were selling payment solutions to all of their healthcare practices. And basically, we went to this trade show, and long story long, my boss at the time asked me, hey, do you want to partner on this to sell data backup? And that's like really aging me because this is before like cloud backup. And this is when practices had paper files and all of that. And so I was like, yeah, what would that look like? And we started the company selling data backup and what's called PCI compliance. And I was going to this school and I was educating and educating, and that's all we were doing. And I started to hear HIPAA. I'm like, what's HIPAA? What's HIPAA compliance? And so I start researching it, and I realize that a risk assessment is required. And so I go and I pitch my partners, because I'm 23 at this time, and I pitch my boss at the time and about, hey, let's like pivot this business and let's create something around HIPAA compliance. And they agreed. And so four of us ended up scaling it together. We at one point had 60 employees, and we built a software as a service for HIPAA and OSHA compliance. So the answer is, it came about by all good things in business, which is listening and seeing that there's a problem that needs solving and then figuring out how to solve that problem. It's as simple as that.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, so you pivoted. Now you've got this slightly different direction. You developed that. Talk to us about the nine-figure exit. How did that come about, and all of the things?
Yeah, so long, very long journey. It took anything good. So everything big starts small, and anything good takes time, and anything really good takes way longer than you would ever anticipate, right?
Oh.
So that was always the mission. Okay, so the mission was always to build this, scale it, and have an exit. And throughout the journey, we were really helping practices. Like if a healthcare practice has a HIPAA or OSHA incident, it can level them. It can take away everything. So we really were helping people with something they didn't really want to deal with because it's not sexy or exciting. And that felt really, really good. But when the exit happened, it felt empty for me, which is insane, because as like even right now, as you're talking about and people are listening to this, are like, oh, nine-figure exit, like, whoa, that's so crazy. And on paper, I mean, I was checking all the boxes. It looked like I was living the dream, but behind it, and I thought that I was, okay, so it wasn't like I was actively like living this life and didn't realize that it wasn't aligned for me. It wasn't until the exit happened that I realized there was something was really off, and I had to go figure out, what is that? Okay, so I went on this crazy journey to figure out what that was, and it led me to discovering my money story. And we can get into that if you'd like, but my money story is why it ultimately felt empty. So it's a really interesting thing, because I don't see it as, it is a huge accomplishment, don't get me wrong. But what I see it as, it was a huge teacher for me. It's why I'm now able to like reach down and help other entrepreneurs scale and do big things. And had I not had that experience, I wouldn't be able to do the work that I do now. And I maybe would have never discovered that I was out of alignment.
Let's take a quick break.
Still stacking AI hacks that just add more tabs instead of saving time? Or tools that promise freedom and just create another login? That's why Callan Faulkner built the Effortless Business Bootcamp. 3 live sessions on October 2nd, 7th, and 9th, where you'll actually build your first AI workflow. Think client follow-ups, deal tracking, or email responses, all in only 5 to 10 hours every week. That's up to $26,000 a year in saved time for just $47. And when you join through LandFans, you unlock over $1,000 in exclusives: the Notion AI Command Center dashboard, the Done-For-You AI Systems bundle, and the Cameras On Setup Workshop, so you leave with everything working. Seats are capped, and the $47 early bird ends September 22nd. After that, it doubles. Don't burn another month on busy work. Go to effortlessainow.com and grab your seat today. That's effortlessainow.com. See you there. Wow. So what can you put your finger on the moment that you had the light bulb that you realized, this is why I feel empty after this nine-figure exit?
Yeah, so it didn't happen instantly. I wish I could say that it did. It was a freaking journey, lots of therapy, lots of different modalities to figure out what was going on there. And it was truly like, like we all have experienced like that breakthrough moment or that aha moment. So it was like that, but like times 10. It was like everything made it click. So it actually happened in phases. And then it wasn't until like the very last phase that I was like, oh, like this is actually the thing that ties all of that together, and it being my money story. So I'll explain that a little bit so that it all tracks. So when I was 8 years old, I asked my mom to leave my dad. And she told me, honey, I would if I could, but I can't afford to care for you kids on my own. So my dad is an alcoholic, undiagnosed bipolar disorder. Growing up, they fought a lot. And after a particularly rough incident, I went to my mom and I asked her this. And in that instant, I didn't know it then, but like literally my money story was solidified and my entrepreneurial flame was lit. Like as I'm telling you this, I can still see myself in my bed looking up at the ceiling and making a promise to myself that I will never let that happen to me. I will always have freedom. So money for me, my story became, you have to make money in order to have choices. You have to make money in order to be safe. You have to make money in order to not let bad things happen to you. So what it did is it created this overachiever in me, this person that was like always going and accelerating and doing things that were beyond my age or my time. And I was doing it out of fear of not having safety, right? So that's why the exit didn't feel good. And it didn't make any sense to me why it didn't feel good, because it's a huge accomplishment, right? But that discovery, that emptiness, and then that journey to discovery is why I now help people understand their money story so that they can live true alignment and within true happiness.
Wow. Wow, that's powerful. So, if someone's listening to this, obviously you just gave us a fantastic sort of illustration of money story. But if someone's trying to lay that on top of their life experience, how would you guide them to figuring out, number one, what is a money story? And number two, how
Yeah.
can they find the breadcrumbs to their own money stories?
Yeah. So when I was in this journey, it led me to discover like the deeper part of money, which is the psychology of it. And there's a really great book by Morgan Housel. He's one of my favorite authors. It's called The Psychology of Money. And I read so many books when I was through this journey. And once I figured out that aha moment, but I'll start with what even is a money story. Okay. So when we are born, before we can even spell the word money, we are being programmed. So when we are age 0 to 7, our subconscious is literally wide open and it's just downloading information like facts. Not just what people are saying to us, but what people are modeling, the energies that we're reading, the behaviors that they have. And so your money story is inherited. It's not something that you create. It's something that is absorbed. It's something that is subconscious and very deeply rooted, often with a lot of emotion attached to it. And it's so deep that sometimes we don't even realize that it's there, like me, right? So that's what your money story is. And to begin to discover your money story, you have to start to take notice of thoughts that you have around money. So if you catch yourself saying, like, money doesn't grow on trees, we can't afford that, or you feel like this anxiety when you open up your bank account or when you spend, and it can even be the flip side, like you feel like people are judging you because you're doing well and you're getting that nice G-Wagon or that bigger custom house, and you feel this resistance around it. That means you have some subconscious blocks from your money story. And then once you have the awareness and you start to see a pattern of what your thoughts are and become aware of it, then you can start to upgrade it and move into your money mindset. And your money mindset is your money muscle, I like to call it. That's your present day. That's what you choose to do with the story. And the story never goes away because it was literally imprinted upon you. But your money mindset is the muscle you develop to override the story and upgrade it into something that actually works for you and that feels good and gives you what I call, so everybody's after happiness, right? But it's actually, you want to be more content. It's not happiness that you're chasing, it's that you want to feel content in the life that you live. And in today's society, we have an endless opportunity for comparison. Yet before social media, your comparison radius was quite small. It was the kids you grew up with, the neighbors that you lived around. And now every time you open up a social media app, you see someone that's doing better than you. And that causes you to then think, oh, that associates with they must be happier than me. And that's not the case. So if we move back to our money mindset, it's going, where do we feel content? And if you can develop your definition of content, it doesn't have to look the same as your neighbor or your boss or your coworker or the person that you look up to. If you develop that and anchor in it, then you can attach your money mindset to it and override the story that's not serving you.
Okay, so in your work with entrepreneurs, are there some common patterns that you see, some common reoccurring money mindset issues that are plaguing entrepreneurs that you've seen in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So the most common ones are going to be like the scarcity mindset. And this is going to be common if you observed or were around like highs and lows in money and it never feeling really stable. Okay. Then more often than not, which is really interesting, is the greed does pop up where your parents might have talked about the neighbor down the street in a way that was a negative condensation because of nice things that they had, or they moved out of the neighborhood and got the bigger house. That kind of thing comes up a lot. And then really just insecurity around being able to keep the money, right? So that they're going to lose it. So they don't feel like there's confidence around what do I do with this? And the thing to note that regardless of what your like archetype is with your money story, you can only hold the amount of wealth that your nervous system is ready for. And so the
Oh,
reason that the money story and the mind piece is so important is because we're often chasing a new strategy. Like I'm sure you have people come on this show that are like telling you how to be better with expanding your land business, right? But the thing is that the strategy, the sales, the messaging, the technique, we're like, oh, we need more shiny object syndrome. No amount of strategy is ever going to override the story that you have around money. So what happens is you're self-sabotaging and you're blocking it often without even knowing it because you haven't spent time to discover what your story is.
Let's take a quick break.
you know what we don't miss? Fixing title typos at midnight. Calling the seller's cousin again for one more signature. Wondering who dropped the ball this time. That's where Easy REI Closings comes in, our go-to transaction coordination service. You send the signed contract, they handle the messy middle. The next time the deal's on your mind is when you're cashing the check. And when you try them through starttc.com, we'll send you our smooth closing starter kit, a toolkit that makes you look like you've done 100 deals, even if you're on deal number 1. From a seller-friendly roadmap and contract walkthroughs to tracking tools and mini trainings, it's the exact setup we use to close confidently, without chasing signatures or second-guessing the process. Right now, you can get $1,000 off the setup fee when you sign up through our link. StartTC.com. Close smarter, sleep better. Wow. Okay, so you just said something that blew my mind, and it's something that is rarely talked about. I think we're starting to see a few more people starting to talk about it, but you just made a comment that we're only going to be able to keep or hold the amount of money that our subconscious feels comfortable with. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and how does that actually manifest? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so this is really common when like clients that will come to me, the story that they have is they're like, I keep hitting the same income ceiling. Okay, I can't break through it. I keep hitting 200,000 and I just want to get to 500,000. And I've invested in this and I've done this new strategy and I've done this. And then my question is, do you know what your relationship with money is? And it's usually like, huh? Like it's just money isn't something that we were taught growing up. And so it's not something that we naturally know to go look at as a solution to the income ceiling or what keeps happening in order to break through. So when the block is there, if you subconsciously believe that you're not good with money, that you don't know how to keep it, that you're not capable of maxing it out, or that it requires you to be performative in order to have it, that's another common one, then you're only going to hit the capacity of what your mind can hold. And the thing is that it's quiet. It's like these little nudges that happen. And we're so inundated with things all day, emails, text messages, scrolling on social media, so many different apps that we don't pause to think about this may actually be the root cause of what we need to break through.
Ooh, okay. So you just mentioned the word performative. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about that because some little flags went up for me whenever you said that.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear a little bit more about that. What do you mean by
Sure.
that?
What I mean by that is that if you felt like that, ooh, like you just said, that raised some flags for me. You probably grew up in a home where you were rewarded for good behavior, high test scores, not fighting with your siblings, doing your chores, not being a kid that really needed a lot of guidance. Like this is really common in firstborn children. And so part of what people don't realize is money is energy, and your money story affects how you show up in life, how you lead, what your spending habits look like, how you feel loved. It is deeply connected to all of those things. So what ends up happening is your story is, well, I have to work really freaking hard in order to deserve that. So what you're doing is you're blocking the flow of ease and being a magnet and just living in your zone of genius and letting the money be a byproduct of that because you're living in authenticity. So if you were triggered by performative, some of those other examples that I gave you, you might have been like nodding your head, yep, that was me. So you need to work on rewiring it to believe that like you're worthy just as you are. You don't have to put on a show. You don't have to show up and do anything extra. You just need to be you and live in your zone of genius. Be willing to show up and serve with the gifts that you've been given, and the money can flow to you. And there's lots of ways you can work to train yourself to believe that, even if you're like, yeah, Danielle, that sounds nice, but I feel the resistance immediately.
Wow. So let me ask, for people that are just now beginning to sort of wrap their brains around the concept of a money story and how their subconscious might be, affecting their money and affecting
Yeah.
how they show up. What do those little nudges look like or sound like? Like, how can people identify, oh, I think that is triggering a money
Mhm.
belief? What does that look
Yeah.
like?
Yeah. So there's a few. So ask yourself, do you avoid looking at your bank account? Okay. If you nodded yes to that, I want you to start to pay attention to how that feels and start to ask yourself, why am I avoiding this? Okay. If you are somebody that when the bill comes and you're at a dinner table and you're like, and someone tries to pay for you and you're like, no, 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 I got it. And you like really battle it. You don't just receive the like, okay, thanks, I'll get the next one. That's an indication, like start to notice that. That's a really easy one that happens in everyday life to go like, that means you're struggling with receiving and the easement. You might be on that performative side. Okay. If the next time you go to make a large purchase, I want you to like just take a minute and just ask yourself, like, what do I feel right now about this transaction? And it'll literally like shoot in. Like it's that inner voice. We all have it. If you haven't read The Untethered Soul, it's a really great book to get comfortable with your inner voice. But those are some examples of where it's just starting to be willing to go, what do I feel about money? Sit down with a friend, a bestie, a spouse, a partner, whomever, and have a conversation, a dialogue back and forth. That's like, what is your relationship with money? What did it look like growing up? What were you taught? What were you not taught? And just start to bring the awareness to it. Because once you're aware of it, then you can name it, then you can rewire it, and you can take back your power. And then your money mindset, your money muscle, which is your present day, gets to run the show.
Oh, that's so good. That is so good. So, what are the steps? Like, once we start figuring out, okay, I'm understanding what my money mindset is, what do those first initial steps look like when it comes to rewiring or building up
Yeah.
that money muscle?
Yeah, so I'll give you a really great exercise that works for anyone. Even if you are like, this girl's nuts, she's way too woo woo, stick with me because I got something for you. So, this is very practical and it's like the logical side of our brain and it's backed by neuroscience. So, if you are not believing this, the easiest thing to do to start to rewire it is to sit down and write out however many negative beliefs pop up for you about money. I'm not good with money. If I make it, I'll lose it anyway, whatever it is. More money, more problems. Write that down And then I want you to picture, we all have this like dream life, this dream version of us that we see in our head, you know, like the little bubble above me, and ask that person what they would believe instead. Okay. And then I want you to reframe it into a positive. So like if your negative statement is more money, more problems, you would change it to more money, more opportunity, right? If it's I'm not worthy of money or I'm not good with money, it's I'm worthy and able to develop money skills and be abundant with wealth. Like whatever it is, you rewrite it, okay? Then you're like, okay, yeah, cool. Still not feeling it. I just wrote some words on a paper. Then you're going to take it a step further. You're going to open up your phone and you're going to create a money alarm. So my favorite number is 3. My money alarm goes off every day at 3:33. And you will see that statement every single day. So you title the alarm your positive reframe, your money affirmation, what you want to believe instead, what that higher level version of you, that next level version, what they want to believe. And every single day, especially if you're feeling the resistance, pause when the alarm goes off, read it out loud, and then start to take action to develop money competence. Because all competence is competence in a subject matter. So like think about the first time you did a land deal. You were probably so nervous. You were phoning the friends. You were like, how am I going to do this? And now you could probably do it in your sleep.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
because you develop the competence. And the reason you're now confident and why you have a podcast and why people tune in and they listen to you is because you put in the reps, you develop the knowledge, you prove that you were actually doing it, and now you can help others do the same. Money is no different. Okay, so I'll give you another story from Morgan Housel in his book. He talks about a janitor, and this janitor passed away with millions of dollars that was given to charity. He was a janitor his whole life. And he didn't have access to any fancy CFPs or financial advisors. But what he had that we all have is discipline. He was willing to be disciplined. He was willing to set aside an amount, and he was willing to leverage compounding interest. So if you want something different, you got to decide to change. You got to put in the time to become aware of it, start to rewire it, and then start to learn money. And where you start is tracking your cash flow. That is step 1 in building money competence.
Oh, that is so good. Okay, so we are definitely going to go into step 1 in just a second. Before we leave this specific topic, I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you could share some tangible, real-world examples of working with your past clients or maybe with yourself of how you've seen, like what sort of those self-sabotaging acts have you seen entrepreneurs do in their own business because of their money mindset or because of their
Yeah.
money stories, rather?
Yeah. So it's like the old Tony Robbins, like it's tried and true, where attention goes, energy flows, right? So the number one mistake is people feel these resistance. They get these flags, like as you called them. They feel these in the moment when they're listening to somebody talking about the thing that they want to shift or they want to pivot, and then they just don't take action. It's really not rocket science. It's that they don't take action. And what that really means is you're not ready to change. You're not ready to override and confront your ego. Okay. Because our
Mm.
ego is designed primitively to keep us safe. And change is scary to the ego. So, especially if you're like my money story was deeply rooted in fear, right? Because I was fear that I wouldn't have choices. I had fear that I wouldn't be able to give my kids a different life. I had fear I would marry the wrong guy, right? So it was deeply rooted in fear. And that's typically like when you peel back all the layers, that's usually what stuff boils down to. And so it's being willing to confront your ego and tell your ego, like, hey, I know that this is triggering or confronting, but this is safe. And that sounds kind of silly, but it's like inner child work and really just recognizing, starting to learn what your triggers feel like energetically is great. Like another practical tip that I can give you to start to develop this is to literally learn what a yes and a no feels like in your body, because our bodies know. Okay. So an easy way anybody can do this, even if you're not like into the woo woo stuff, is you sit and you like place your hand on your stomach and your heart and you close your eyes and you say, my name's Danielle McKinley. That's my name. So my body is going to be like, yes. And then I do it again and I'm like, my name's Benjamin Franklin. And it's no. And so that's how you can start to develop this muscle of like what feels good and what doesn't feel good. And you can start to use that everywhere when you're having a challenge and start to ask your body for the answers because it knows.
Oh gosh, that's so good. That is so good. All right,
I'm
so
going to tell you this too, really quick.
yeah.
There's a really good book. It's called The Body Keeps Score,
Hmm.
because we often associate and think that trauma has to be something that was like really memorable. Okay. And that like really, like we think of trauma as like the scary, I don't even want to say them because it's sad, but we all know what I'm talking about. Okay. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. You can have many traumatic experiences that you don't even realize are still affecting you, but your body literally keeps score of it. So this book does a fantastic, it's very fantastic in helping you understand what that means and how to recognize it in your own body. And that is where self-sabotage is rooted in. It's rooted in ego and your body trying to keep its because of experiences it's had up until this moment.
Let's take a quick break.
You know what creatives crave but rarely find? A place where the craft, not the clout, comes first. Where one pause in a performance can mean more than 1,000 words. That's why the Effect Experience Group is our gathering space for artists, performers, and creative directors who design for goosebumps. Inside, it's artists telling their truth about their obsessions, moments pulled apart to show why they move us, and creative provocations that sharpen the edge of your own craft. This is a space for the ones who live to make people feel, the ones obsessed enough to know that a single breath held at the right time can change everything. Step into the circle at effectexperiencegroup.com. That's effectexperiencegroup.com. See you inside.
Gosh, so much to unravel in that. I mean, you've already given us three fantastic resources. So let me ask you this question because I think that one of the things that my brain instantly went to when you were
Mm-hmm.
talking about holding on to money is the fact that in the land industry, we know that it can be extremely volatile. We have it's feast or famine, right? So it's like, yeah, we're doing great deals and a month of nothing, right? And so I think that causes a lot of land investors, a lot of land professionals to start creating this money story that, this is unstable and it's very volatile. And so, can you talk about what are some pieces of advice that you would give to someone that's in an industry that can be unstable? Like, how do we navigate financial instability and still keep our confidence that, like, hey, it's all going to be fine. Like, we can, money's in, money's out. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So everything comes back to your money story, right? So it's all developing the relationship with money and then creating the habits with money. So first step one is identify what your money story is. Because if your money story is somebody that I have money and I lose money, it's going to be even more important for you to leverage the systems and tools that like I teach because that's already what you believe. And so you're going to succumb to it like so much worse than somebody who has a different story than you. Okay, then the next big thing is everything. So money foundation starts with cash flow tracking. Everybody thinks it's budgeting, right? But you can't budget something you don't know. And so if you don't deeply understand what's coming, what's going, what your overhead is, how much your teams are, what systems you're using, and what those cost, how can you plan for it? Okay. And then what's so beautiful about cash flow tracking is it'll start to show you trends when you consistently show up and do it for yourself. So you can start to see like what months statistically in our industry are better than others. How much money do I need for the year so that you can plan differently for your first big commission checks that you plan out, okay, now I have that for the year and I'm going to stabilize myself for the next while. And how much do I need to set apart so that if we have a bigger dip, I have a safety net, right? So it's getting familiar with what's happening and being honest with yourself about your spending habits, because a lot of people that are in land industry, realtors, sales commission based type jobs or companies, coaches, right? Where they do launches and then they don't have a launch, or event hosts, is they feel like the dopium hit of like, okay, I just got $100,000, and then they spend it and they don't think about like the lull. But if you plan, you won't have that feeling of instability because data doesn't lie. So if you have the data and you understand your numbers, you don't have to worry. You could be successful in any market because you're planning, you're giving your dollars the best jobs. It's all about assigning a job to the dollar. And that's where people miss it, is they think like, oh, I kind of have a budget, but if you're not tracking everything, you're not making data-driven decisions.
That is huge. Data-driven decisions. I think that anyone in the land industry that's been around the block a couple times can tell you that data is king in everything for our business, for and like you're talking about, like for our lives, for our money mindset. So can you talk to the people that are listening to this? Could be land, could be real estate investors, could be
Yeah,
anyone in any industry that feels like, Danielle, I am literally constantly just in survival mode. I don't even know where to begin. Does the money mindset and rewiring, can that help those people?
absolutely. It can help you the most, but much like anything, it can only help you if you're ready to be helped. So if you're not willing to make a change, if you are telling yourself the stories of, I don't have another second to like even learn a new thing or to add anything to my plate, you're not ready to make a change. So absolutely, it can help you with the right shift and understanding of what's going on up here, and then implementing the right systems for money and the right strategy for wealth building. You can pull yourself out of that for sure. You are in a very, especially if you're in the land business, you're in a very lucrative business. There's not a lot of businesses that can get those chunks of cash that quickly. So it's a mindset thing already. If you're telling yourself, I'm in survival mode, like I can't take on another thing. I just can't. You're literally blocking your blessings.
That is so good. That is so good. One of the things that comes up immediately for me is I talk to so many different people in different stages of their evolution as land investors, from beginners to seasoned professionals. And it's so interesting that there are some people that can copy to the letter what
Mm-hmm.
someone else is doing, and it just doesn't work for them. And they're like, well, land doesn't work, or mail doesn't work, or texting doesn't work. To me, I chalk that up to mainly mindset and how you're showing up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I validate that. I subscribe to that. It's energetics. Okay, so number one, your energy is your edge. So one of the things that I'll see is people will get caught up in like, oh, they're copying me, or oh, they're doing the same thing. Well, number one, it's a compliment, because if someone's copying you, it means they can see that you're onto something. But number two, what you can rest assured in is that your energy is your edge. How you show up is always going to be unique. That's why we all have unique DNA, and nobody can replicate or copy that. So if you're the person that's going, I want to blueprint carbon copy this, and then you just write it off because it didn't work for you, I would be willing to bet that number one, the person you copied had been doing it way longer than you. And so just because you didn't get the instant highlight reel that you're seeing that person get, it's because you didn't put in the work and your mind wasn't right. You thought you were taking the easy road, and you weren't instilling and infusing your own energy into the process to make it unique to you. So you can copy the systems and the format, but you have to really be realistic and honest with yourself. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I did that. Yeah, I did what Kendall just said and it didn't work, and I still think that it doesn't work. I would challenge you to really ask yourself, how much time did you give it? What were your expectations of an immediate response? And is that realistic in the industry, period? And I think you'll find your answer.
Oh, so good. So good. That is a highlight that I will listen to myself. I will rewind and listen to, because I think we can all be I think we can all benefit from just really digging into that piece. because we're entrepreneurs. We're always trying to, what's the next shiny thing? I'm like, oh, that sounds amazing. I'm gonna dive into that because so and so made millions of dollars doing it. And we try it for a week and we're like, yeah, it doesn't work.
But
So
a great thing for you to do is like the thing we said, like, is this a yes or a no? Like the shiny new object syndrome is real. So like, how do you protect yourself energetically from going after the next thing that's working, or like, oh, that's great, that's great. You got to ask if it's right for you. Does it really make sense? Or are you just doing it because you want an immediate response? Like our society is so conditioned to be like immediate, and all good things take time.
yeah.
Nothing really, really cool or transformative or innovative was built overnight with overnight success. Does it happen? Sure. But when you look at the statistics and the math and the data that doesn't lie, it's very rare. So do you want to bet on that horse, or do you want to bet on you getting competent in the thing that you're aligned with, that lights your soul on fire, that you want to be good at, that you want to serve people with, and know that the data shows if you show up and you're disciplined and you put in the work, it will work.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So good. All right. So you mentioned that step one is the cash flow, right? Let's dive into some nuts and bolts and talk about wealth building and systems and all of those tangible things that complement the money mindset. We know the money mindset is an integral piece of the formula. The other piece is like the action and the nuts and the bolts. So let's talk a little bit about that, starting with that first step of cash flow. You mentioned tracking cash flow.
Yeah. Yeah. And it all comes back to, if you can't make decisions off of things you don't know. So you're literally flying blind if you're, and most people do it well in business, right? They'll look at the data, they'll look at the P&L, they'll look at what's happening, like, oh, can we afford the new hire? But they're not holistically looking at everything. Like, what is your actual take home? What are you doing with that? What are your expenses? Kind of like what we talked about. How do we plan for the highs and the lows of the industry that we love? And so step one is getting a solution for that. And I would love to gift the listeners with a cash flow tracker that I created. That I'm a software person. So my company I built was SaaS. And I have not found, and I can't right now because I'm under a non-compete, build my own, but I haven't found a solution that's digital, that's an app that covers everything. And so what I want you to think about, it is a spreadsheet, but it's all formulated. It's got a really pretty dashboard and great reporting. But what I want you to think about, if you lean towards technology, is you want to get like down to the nitty gritty with your money. You want to know every subscription that you're paying, every bill that's reoccurring, what your mortgages are, what land do you own, how much equity is in it, what credit cards do you have, how much rewards do you have, how much access to credit do you have. You want to know it all so that you can give your dollars the best job and create the best strategy for wealth building. And so the starting point is just deciding, hey, I'm going to get familiar with my numbers and using something like the tool that I have, or one that works for you, to really deeply understand it.
Well, thank you so much. That is so generous of you sharing your tool with us. How can they access that?
So what I'll do is I'll give you a link and we'll use code LandFans, and they can get, so my program is called the SOTU. It's called SOTU Master Money and Unlock Freedom. And it has a bunch of resources. So we'll just give them everything. It's got like some videos you can watch. It's got a cash flow tracker. It's got a guide for how to implement everything. It's got a financial data checklist that you should be looking at. It'll help you get the system in place.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We'll definitely make sure that we put the link and the code in the description and in the show notes. So thank you so much for that. That is amazing.
Yeah,
Okay,
for sure.
so once we have this understanding of where the money is going and what we're doing with it,
Mhm.
how do you advise people to create true wealth? Like what does that like 30,000 foot view look like? Because we hear
Yeah.
all of the time
Mhm.
that there's something that the 1% is not teaching the masses about
Yeah.
money. So what
Yeah.
is that? What does that look
Yeah.
like?
So it's funny you say that, because I actually have a program. So I have a life insurance agency and I teach people how to leverage life insurance like the 1%, like the things they don't want to tell you about. Okay. But that
Ooh.
it all fits into a full strategy, because there's not like one thing that you want to do to build wealth and protect wealth. There's multiple legs to it. So much like any good business, it has multiple streams of revenue that protect it if one leg is outperforming the other, right? Or if there's a lull somewhere, you've got the protection. So when you think about assigning your dollars good jobs, you really want to think about diversifying. The problem is because we weren't taught about money, everybody's like, that's great, Danielle, where do I start? And do I do everything? And what phase? Where do I hit it all, right? So I teach this method, what's called the savings trifecta. And it teaches you in phases what to add. And then once you have all these things and you're maxing it out and you have excess cash flow, then we get into like what's called creative finance. Okay, so I'll just break down the savings trifecta for you. So you've got the savings trifecta, you've got 3 legs. Okay, so leg 1 is a 401k of any kind. A SEP 401k, a Roth 401k, an employer-sponsored 401k, a 401k. Okay, and you want to max it out if possible. Or you want to max it out if you have an employer-sponsored one. Okay, if you don't have an employer-sponsored one, then we want to look at this other element that's important if you're employed, but very important if you are a business owner. And that is having what's called an IUL policy. It's an index universal life insurance policy. And the reason this is important is I'll ask you a question and it'll answer it for you. What would it look like if you couldn't show up to your life for a year? What would that do to you financially? You tell us, Kendall, what would that do?
Well, I think it would depend on what you have saved away, right? Like your
It would chip
expenses.
away at it, right? Would you agree that it would chip
Absolutely.
away at it? Okay.
Absolutely.
So this IUL policy, it is designed to be cash accumulating. So it grows money. It basically puts money in 2 buckets. A cash growth vehicle, that's cash you can access tax and penalty free, which is huge for people like land investors, right? And then it has an element of life insurance. And that life insurance protects you if something happens. So if you're injured on the job, if you're in a car accident, like I recently had a client who was in a car accident, she's okay, but she was in a coma for 24 days. I had written a $1 million policy on her, and she was in this first leg of her savings trifecta with me. She had a $1 million policy, and on day 2 of her being in a coma, her husband knew of the policy and contacted me. We issued her a check for $800,000. Because when you have a policy that's structured properly, not only are you doing cash growth, which is helping your overall strategy, but now you have this protective mechanism that's protecting you, the asset, because you're the engine of your life, right? So that allowed her to pay for expenses to keep her team going. She's a business owner. She has 3 employees, and she didn't have to dip into the 401k or the traditional savings vehicles, which penalize her. They would have penalized her because it's prior to retirement age. Okay, so does that make sense in the first leg? So we split them between the 2. So that's already some diversification day 1, but most importantly, you're protecting you, the engine of your life, okay? Then phase 2 of the savings trifecta is what's called an HSA account. And you can get this even if you are self-employed as a business owner, you can get these accounts. It does require you to have a high deductible account, but it's the only account that has 3 tax benefits. So you get a tax deduction on the way in. You can use the money tax and penalty free if it's used for medical expenses. And after retirement, when you take it out for medical expenses, it's not taxed. If you take it out for something non-medical, it's taxed as ordinary income. So it's a really great vehicle, and you can invest the money you're putting in it. So now you've got like 3 buckets of money that's compounding and growing for you, okay? Then the last leg of the savings trifecta is going to be the Roth IRA. And this one is incredible because there's no tax benefit on the way in, okay? So it's not, and that's why it's last in the strategy, because when you're new to this, you want to really maximize your tax deductions. And that's what these other 2 legs do for you while building the overall cohesive plan. This last one though, in the Roth, you can invest it and you're not taxed on the gains and you're not taxed on the withdrawals in retirement. So you have all these different vehicles that have different types of tax protection or tax benefits, right? And you want to do them strategically in that order because of those benefits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. So one of the terms that I hear kicked around very often when it comes to this particular topic is infinite banking. Can
Yeah.
you Can you give us like a layman's definition of what infinite banking is and how that can play into your wealth building strategy?
Absolutely. So remember how I said like cash flow tracking is step one. Then we've got like a budget, we have a plan, and then we start to do our strategy for building our growth. Then when we have excess, then we move into infinite banking. And this is the thing that the 1% doesn't want you to know. But the thing is you've got to have some ducks in a row before you're ready for infinite banking. So infinite banking in layman's terms is becoming your own bank. And how you do this is by leveraging whole life insurance policies. Okay. Basically, to put it as simple as I can, you do a pour in amount, let's say of $1 million, and then you can access the next day 80% of that. Okay. So $800,000. So you've got $1 million policy here, and then you've got your $800,000 here that you're going to go buy land with, and you're going to flip it and make a profit. While your policy is right here, it looks like that money never left. Okay, so you're still compounding interest on that $1 million pour in. You're paying an interest on the loan you took out, the 800,000, but you're still growing your gains on $1 million. You with me so far? Okay. So now you've just split and you've got two assets that are compounding interest. Then you make your profits from that, you keep it, and you can throw the money back in, and you didn't pay taxes or penalties on this money. There was no need to go fill out a loan with a bank and go through the approval process. You got instant access to the money. So infinite banking is really great for people who are actively using their money. And typically you're ready for an infinite banking strategy. I like to say if you're making 7 figures a year, but if you're very disciplined with your money and you're making 500,000, it could work. It's just like you're for sure ready at $1 million. Even if you haven't been dialing in your systems, we can get that going really quick and then get you ready for infinite banking model pretty quickly. But basically, to put it really simple, you're taking $1 and you're turning it into 2 every single time. Tax and penalty free.
Wow, that is massive. That is massive. Now, for people that are listening to this and that maybe not they're not familiar with these terms, infinite banking, and maybe they even have that sort of mainstream thought process that, wait a minute, I thought life insurance was after you die, then your estate or whoever beneficiary gets the money, and then how does that benefit me to have a life insurance policy? Can you talk a little bit about leveraging a life insurance policy in the way that you teach?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really common misconception. And typically people that get life insurance, they either think that, oh, it's for when you die, or I don't need it because I don't have children. That's another really common one that I see. Okay, so I had given you the example of my client that was in a coma and how life insurance paid her while she was alive. So when structured properly, it comes with living benefits. And that ensures that if life's and some emergency happens, you don't have to tap into your wealth building vehicles that could give you a penalty. Okay. Now, the other thing is that you don't necessarily have to be ready for infinite banking in order to leverage life insurance now. So the IUL policy that we talked about in the savings trifecta, you can do it with that too on a smaller scale. So I'll give you a real life example. So I have 2 little kids. I have a 6 and a 3-year-old, and I have IUL policies on them. And by the time they're both 30, they'll have roughly $200,000 in cash that they can access tax and penalty free. They can start a business. They can use it to buy a house, to pay for a wedding, whatever the case is. And heaven forbid, if anything should happen to them where they have a critical, chronic, or terminal illness, I now have the policy with living benefits to use to care for them. And I'm not tapping into any of my other resources or my other legs of my financial plan in order to cover it. Okay,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
those are, and then even like mortgage protection. I'll use this example too, because I know there's probably a lot of agents and stuff here. So we hear PMI, right? PMI protects the lender when they don't put the 20% down, right? So most clients, when they buy a house, that's the biggest purchase they've ever had. Well, what are we doing to protect that asset? So if they don't have coverage, if something happens to them, how can they ensure their mortgage is paid? So you can structure a life insurance policy with mortgage protection. Same thing.
Wow.
Okay, so
That's
there's a lot. The reason I'm like so passionate about life insurance, which remember I told you at the beginning of this, there were signs. Like I played office in my grandfather's home office, and he was he owned a huge agency. I had no interest in being a life insurance agent. It just things happen, right? There's little signs. And it's because of this. It's because of it really is how you leverage, expand, and protect your wealth.
wow. That is so good. That is so
Mhm.
good. So let me ask you this question. In your industry and the work that you do, what is the newest thing that you are most excited about that you wish everyone knew about? I mean, you've given us so many great things about, life insurance and how to leverage it and
Yeah.
the three different steps. Is there anything new that you've come across and you're like, this needs to be talked about?
It's infinite banking. So here's the thing is that because, okay, so just like any industry, so in the life insurance world, like you can take a test and start working for somebody immediately. And there's this funny thing that happens just like a brokerage, like recruiting a new agent. It's the opposite of like a W-2, right? Like everybody wants you to work with them. Yeah, of course they do because they want to make a split, right? So there's good actors and bad actors. That's my point. And like any business, you're only as good as your mentor. You're only as good as the person that's helping you. And for me, getting into the industry, I want to really shift it so that it's people are really putting the client first and using the tools in this positive way. And so when I first got in, I knew about infinite banking. I knew about being your private bank. I had no idea how to even set it up. So much so that when I sold my business, had I known about that strategy, oh my gosh, I would have put so much money there. Okay. So now I'm like, I am so passionate about helping seven-figure earners, people that are going through large transactions or selling companies, leverage that strategy. It is something that not enough people know about. And it is something that is like, it's definitely that thing where you're like, is this too good to be true? And it's not, it's actually true. So for sure, long story long, infinite banking.
Infinite banking. You heard it here. That's fantastic. I love it. So let me ask you this question, Danielle. If you could go back and give your younger self three pieces of advice when you were first starting out on your entrepreneurial journey, what would they be?
Ooh, so good. The first like download that I get is to ask for help and not make that a bad thing. So part of like the work that I've done, learning how to ask for help was something I really struggled with and still like really try to practice today. So definitely asking for help, and that doesn't mean that you're not good enough or you're not worthy or that you can't figure it out. It's actually healthy and a productive thing to do to ask for help. The second thing is I would tell myself to slow down and enjoy and really like sit and rest in even the small wins, because the small wins ultimately are what stack up to make the big win. And I think in looking back at my journey with my SaaS company, had I done that, I think it would have felt good at the end. It was almost this like, whoa, it just happened. And the third thing is I would tell myself to cut off toxic people
Mm,
way faster.
yeah, that's a big one. And
Yes.
immediately, the minute you said that, I immediately thought, like, how do toxic people impact energy? And if
Mm,
money is energy, like,
yeah.
how does that all? Yeah, that's remarkable. That's so good. So let me ask you this. What's your biggest goal that you'd like to achieve at this point in your life?
My goal might surprise you. My goal has nothing to do with money. My goal has nothing to do with material things. My goal is to be the best damn mom that I can, to show up and be present and enjoy every moment of this experience and really help people unlock their mind so that they can release themselves and feel really good about life too. That's my goal. I want to be remembered for like helping people find their most happiness.
That is beautiful. Beautiful. Such an impact. Well, I want to thank you so much for being so generous today. How can we give back to you? What types of connections or resources are you currently looking for?
Um, gosh, see, you're asking, this is like the help thing, right? I go blank. I'm like, oh, I gotta ask for help right now. That's fun. I think that if there was something that really moved you or that you really connected with, share it, because really at this stage, it's helping me understand more of like where I'm moving the needle the most in the work that I'm doing. And if you're curious about what is my mindset, reach out to me and let's like book a one-on-one. But yeah, I think just sharing, I love, like, I'm a words of affirmation girly. So I love hearing how something impacted you or if it shifted you at all.
Yeah, I love that so much. And if people want to reach out to you, where can they find you? How can they do that?
I'm most active on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Life by Danielle. And you can check out my website, daniellemckinley.com. But if you want to like chat and have a little vibe going, then hang out with me on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely put the handles and all of the links in the show notes. So thank you so much, Danielle. This has been absolutely incredible. So eye-opening in so many different ways. You've given us so much. So thank you so much. This has been absolutely fantastic.
My pleasure. Thanks for
Uh,
having me.
for sure. All right. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Hey, Land fans. Tired of sellers ghosting faster than your ex? Get ready. Our friend Ajay Sharma has created the ultimate program to transform your acquisition game. Land Closers Academy brings you weekly call reviews, a powerhouse community, and the proven system for turning leads into signed contracts. And check this out. Sign up now at olfclosers.com and you'll get my personal call review template that's crushing it with both my team and my coaching clients. This is the exact system we use to level up acquisition managers and consistently grow their closing skills. It's a game changer for managing your team. Ready to close more deals? Head to olfclosers.com and let's get you crushing it. Because the only thing getting ghosted should be your old closing rate. Boom.